Hey, this is Type V3 and I welcome you to the Velvet Room with Bandai's D-Arts Elizabeth, everyone's favorite lethal elevator attendant from both Persona 3 and 4. Throughout the Persona series, Elizabeth has maintained a consistent look, and this D-Arts release elevates that minimal design into a beautiful figure. The sculpting is on the mark, and her proportions are just about perfect too. Even the joints look good, and I don't find that they break up the silhouette. Small details like the raised gold buttons and slight wrinkles at the base of her dress are a nice touch, but it's really the flat paintwork that impresses the most. All the colors have been applied evenly with very crisp edges, which in some cases include bold black lining. There's some nice violet shading that runs down Elizabeth's spine, and to top things off, the entire dress has been lightly dusted with glitter. The result is a figure with simplistic presentation and an understated attractiveness. Elizabeth's head sculpt too is strong in its appearance. The use of silver paint for her hair was smart, and the little cap came out sharp. My only concern is the obvious seam line that runs down the side of her head. Of course, this was unavoidable as that's where her cap and hair disconnects for her face swaps, of which you get 3 in total. First is her standard expression, next up is a seductive stare, and last is a spellcasting face, though you could say it looks like she's just about to sneeze. All the faces resemble the character quite well, yet something's off. The sculpting itself is accurate, but I think the vibrant lips aren't quite in line with her original, more natural look. Still, this is undeniably Elizabeth. At 5 inches tall, she's smaller than I would have liked and will more or less resemble a child up against most 6-inch action figures. Though there is an upside to this. Elizabeth scales perfectly with the Persona 4 Figmas. From the moment you pick up Elizabeth, there is something immediately apparent, and that is she does not feel like a D-Arts figure, or at least anything in the recent D-Arts lineup. For example, compared to someone like Rido, Rido feels plasticky and very scratchy and kind of cheap. Elizabeth doesn't feel like that. Elizabeth doesn't feel like any of the Pokemon D-Arts who are very smooth yet overpainted, blocking some joints. Elizabeth doesn't have that issue. What Elizabeth feels like is identical to that of a Figma. And that is kind of surprising to say the least. What Bandai did is said, hey, check out what Max Factory is doing, let's do that, and this is what they put out. And honestly, I'm perfectly satisfied with that. This is a pretty awesomely articulated figure. For starters, the head is on the standard ball joint. And there's also a joint at the base of the neck, so that, they did one step beyond a Figma joint. They did that. The shoulders are great. There's a sort of swivel there at the shoulder. Same with the elbow joints. Wrists are on a ball joint. Of course, they do have a ball joint, like I said. The torso, pretty well articulated there. And then the waist or hips are each on ball joints, single joint at the knee, and then the ankles are on ankle rockers. So, as you can tell, articulation is pretty identical to that of the standard Figma body. And I really have no complaints. The one odd thing I want to point out is that she has asymmetrical default hands. And she doesn't come with fists. She has this strange sort of open palm here, and this one is a lazily, I'm kind of pointing at you. It's a strange decision. I like these hand options, but it's still kind of weird that they're different. As for accessories, you get a single left hand with a peg to hold the Persona Compendium. The details on this small book are incredible. There's shading around the edges, metallic paints, and the pages are even sculpted in and lined. To top things off, there's also a pair of pegged hands that hold an open version of the book, complete with text and pictures. Next up is a single right hand which is meant to hold a tarot card. The tarot card itself is made of hard plastic and the printing on it is of the Death Arcana. This all works as a fine display piece, though I would have liked more options for holding the card. The final accessory in the box is a chair, and it's a gorgeous one at that. This midnight blue piece of furniture has its appearance enhanced by extensive shading, complex sculpting, and metallic detailing on the front. Clearly, someone at Bandai had way too much fun creating this thing. Now, because of her dress, Elizabeth can't actually sit in the chair, but thankfully Bandai have also included a second dress piece molded into a sitting position. You do have to disassemble Elizabeth to implement this gimmick. It's tedious, but completely worth it. Also, despite having free range of movement in the legs, the skirt is shaped to match a crossed leg position only. When Bandai first announced D-Arts Elizabeth, my initial excitement for the toy was met with huge reluctance. After all, a lot of the recent D-Arts offerings aren't very impressive, and naturally I assumed D-Arts Elizabeth would follow suit. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. Elizabeth is an amazing figure and an awesome package overall. Bandai improved upon the competition's product to create a very functional action figure and simultaneously added in a bit of flair to strengthen presentation. This is, without doubt, one of the best Persona figures to date. That said, DArt's Elizabeth isn't cheap, and at $50, that also puts her on level pricing with Max Factory's Persona Figmas, and if I'm honest, she's not a better value. Although there's a good variety of accessories here, she could use more, specifically hands or effect parts, and a display base would be nice. Then there's the chair. Now, I absolutely adore it, but if you're solely interested in the Elizabeth figure alone, then the inclusion of this expensive accessory will only sting more. Still, as a die-hard Persona fan, I'm completely in love with DArt's Elizabeth. She's slightly overpriced, but a wonderful package nonetheless. Anyways, this has been Type V3. Thanks for watching, and I'm a little surprised this figure was produced. The Persona series doesn't exactly have a shortage of characters, and Elizabeth isn't even a main one at that. Well, hopefully this means Bandai will pick up where Max Factory left off and finally give us a completed Persona cast.